Thank you, Samita. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Varun Kharbanda, and I'll be talking about my experience of setting up a solo practice, not in a big town, but a smaller town where things are different, the perceptions are different, and you have to market yourself in a slightly different way. I don't have any financial disclosure. I wish I had, but starting up, when we were planning this course, I had a discussion with Samita, and she said that apart from the logistics, we should also talk about what motivates one to make such moves. I mean, if you're in an institute, you have a cushy job, everything is sorted, you don't have to worry about the infrastructure, just go in and come back. So, what is it that motivates you? Can be the desire to start on your own, uh, might have been a part of your plans from the beginning, uh, wanting to be closer to family, wanting to bring a change, which I call the Swadesh effect. Uh, could be for financial reasons. Uh, or you might have just had enough of punching ins and punching outs and applications for one lifetime. I think for me it was a mix of all of this. That it was actually a part of the plan from the beginning, and yeah, mix of all these reasons. But it can be anyone for you. So I moved from Narayan Netralaya, Bangalore to Prayag Netralaya, Allahabad. It's such a huge change that we even spell Netralaya differently up there. Anyways, so when you start your center, like Karishma mentioned, you have to ask yourself what kind of center you want. Is it going to be only an OPD or an OPD plus OT where you do surgery and have daycare for patients, or you want to have an IPD? Uh, of course, the major kind of motivation or major concern here is the amount of finances that you have. If you have a good financial backing, if you have someone backing you up, then going for the full Monty OPD, OT, IPD, that's the best thing to have. But most of us in small towns, not in big towns, we end up having OPD plus OT setups where you can have patients in the morning, do your cataract surgeries, and send them home and call them the following day. So when I talk about starting from scratch, these are the things which I faced. I mean, they don't seem tough, but to come up with a name for your center is a huge thing. Now there are two schools of thought: people who go with their family name or their first name, or people who want to build a brand. So wisdom says that if you name a hospital after yourself, then what will happen later in life when the hospital grows up? People are going to come for you. You can't be in 100 places at the same time. So it's always prudent to build a brand where you are the engine that drives the brand, and when the brand grows up, you don't have to be present everywhere all the time. The brand is enough. So I came up with this name, Prayag Netralaya. Of course, that time it was still Allahabad, now it is Prayagraj. So it is serendipity, it worked in my favor. But there are other minor problems which come into play when you're thinking of a name. I wanted to call my center Triveni Netralaya because Allahabad has Sangam where three rivers meet. But Triveni in today's day and age sounded a little communal, so I didn't want to lose out on my minority patients. So you have to think secularly. You have to, if you name it after a god or something, you might alienate a good percentage of your patients. So you have to have a balance of that. So yeah, Prayag Netralaya is what I came up with. Coming to location, like Karishma mentioned, that it's always better to have something close by because of the logistics or traveling issues in a big city. In a small city, it's not much of a problem. I went by population density, and as simple as it sounds, just doing a Google map on the location that you're planning to open your clinic in will give you a good idea about the surrounding population of that place or the population density. And in a city like Allahabad, there are no distances which are more than 10 to 15 minutes to come and go. So for us, having it that close to the house or the distance to be less is not that big an issue. Starting off, so I'm going to be talking about my own experience. So what exactly do you require? A center, if you have a space which is even as less as 400 to 600 square feet, I think that should suffice. The things that you need to have are a reception and waiting area, like you saw in Karishma's clinic. I was lucky enough to find a bigger place because in a small town it's easier. The real estate is not so difficult to find and not so expensive. So I have a workup room which also doubles up as a minor OT. Then I have a doctor's chamber and an OT. I managed to scrape out space for changing room and scrub station separately. But yeah, these are the few things that you need to mark space out for. Even if they are not physically divided, you can at least designate areas for these things, but at least have it structured, because all of this is going to seem meaningless right now, but when things move ahead and they become bigger, having things organized is going to help you. Also, you can opt to have an optical counter at your clinic, and pharmacy, of course. Those are why I've asterisked them, is because that's optional. I had the space and I had the resources, so I went for a pharmacy as well as having a small optical counter at my place as well. So Prayag Nitralaya came up. That doesn't look much, but from a small town's point of view, that's my reception. That's the waiting area. That's my optical counter. This is the workup and the OPD. That's my chamber and the OT. So in a nutshell, that's Prayag Nitralaya for you. Coming to the paperwork that one has to do. Now, I don't have IPD, so I don't need to do a lot of these. But a clinical registration is a must with the CMO. You have to have biomedical waste disposal, especially if you're operating. NOC for fire and pollution is not required in a daycare center in Allahabad. Different states have different rules. So if you have a hospital where you have IPD, you have inpatients, you need to have fire and pollution NOC as well. Now, opticals and pharmacy is a little tricky. So when I went back to Allahabad, everyone who would sell medicines would have to take drug license, or they were taking drug license. But I remembered something I had read in forensic, and I dug a little deep. And I found the Cosmetics and Drugs Act 1947. And it is written in bold and clear letters that a registered medical practitioner is free to dispense the medicines he prescribes on his paper. The only thing is, you cannot dispense medicines written by other people, other people's prescriptions, and you cannot display your medicines. If you're fulfilling those two, so I have an almirah where my drops are kept, and whatever medicines I write, they take. And I have the copy of that damn act with me, because anytime a drug inspector walks in, I have that too. So yes, it's a myth, or maybe it's a misinformation, and people like to be cautious from the beginning. But for a dispensary or a private practice, solo practitioner, you can dispense drugs on your own as well. That's legal to do that. Opticals, again, you will need to have a sales tax registration if you're opening an optical counter for yourself. What I did was I outsourced it. I had an MOU with an optical chap, and he gives me a cut from the profits, and he runs the counter. So it saves me the headache of wastage and keeping stock, and basically the fitting and the chick of the patients, that when they come back and not happy with the glasses, etc. Moving on. So yeah, this is the next tricky part, and everything is governed by the kind of finances you have at your disposal. I divided the equipment that I wanted into three categories. The first is absolutely essential. If you want to have a practice of a certain standard, these things you need to have. So a chair unit, a slit lamp. Right nowadays, you can't treat glaucoma without applanation tonometer. The people who are senior to me in my city, they are still using Shiots, but it's more of a tradition. It's been going on. Something to screen your patients for their IOP, autoref. So a phaco is actually a semi-essential. I am primarily a phaco-refractive surgeon, and I could have used someone else's OT in the beginning. But what I realized, and what Karishma was also putting across, especially in a small town, you have to sell yourself. And when you sell yourself, jab India ka batting hota tha, you have Tendulkar coming at number one. You have to sell your best point. So for me, I was the first person who was doing topical phacos in my city. I was the first person who was doing torics and multifocals in my city. So I could not have done that if I hadn't invested in the phaco machine. So for me, it became essential. But someone else who might just want to have an OPD setup, it is not that essential. And autoclave and vision chart, of course. Now, the optional thing was a hangover from Narayana, because I used to think whatever I'll do it properly. I did not need to invest in an EMR, but I did. I did not want to invest in a digital vision chart, but I did. I didn't have to. Accounting software, AC for the waiting area, a fridge, a TV for your waiting area. All these things are optional. As your practice picks up, you can think about making those improvements. And the absolute luxury items are like a recording camera for your microscope, a topographer, OCT, HVF. That's basically my wish list for the next 4 to 5 years. So this is something which comes with time. And of course, you have to have a computer with a good internet connection and Netflix and Amazon Prime to take you through your days. Yeah, so stationery is important because it works as a branding. The patient will carry your paper. You shouldn't have flimsy sheets. They should at least last. You should have folders that have your name clearly imprinted, because what will happen? No, the patient will go home and will just throw the folder around. And if it's durable, it'll keep lying around. So people will get to see it. It has a recall value. So don't be kind of, go out and have a good quality of stationery that you send out with your patients. So this is the EMR that I'm using. Like I said, a lot of people said that why are you investing so much initially, this and that. But after I put EMR, 4 of the leading practitioners of the city have put this EMR. Because what happens is, in my part of the country, patients will never come back to you with their previous sheets. And the fact that when they come and you can click a button and their name shows up and the paper shows up, it causes just that much of an impression that, okay, this doctor is thorough, he's professional, and he can take care of me even if I can't. So I know when the patient walks in, I know the patient's name, I know when the patient came to me last, I also know what the patient had last. So even after a year and a half or 2 years, when the patient walks in and you give that information to the patient, the impression that makes, it's worth, I think, the investment that you do in the EMR. And again, there are a lot of points in EMR, whether you should go for offline EMRs or online EMRs, things like Practo, etc. And it all comes down to what are your requirements. There are pros and cons of everything. I went for an offline one because I want my data to be secure. Because I can never be sure with an online EMR what happens to my data, who uses my data, and that's something I'm not comfortable with. So my EMR is offline. Now, not so much in a big town, but in a small town, accounting software for a doctor from day one was frowned upon, because most of the medical practice in my part of the country is cash. And the doctors always kind of, show income less than what they're making, so that to save on taxes and whatnot. But I decided that I'm not going to do it. I was talking to Dr. Mulani just now, and when he said something, it just rang in my ears that I don't want stress. I want to have a happy and peaceful life. मैं 4 पैसा और दे दूंगा tax में, but I want things to be plain and simple. So I have opted for a accounting software where every rupee that comes into my clinic is accounted for, every expenditure is accounted for. And at the end of the year, my CA just needs one sheet. So I don't have to run around, even though I have an audited account, but yeah, so it makes life easier. These are the physical records that you have to keep, the consent forms, the OT papers, all these you can't store in EMR or soft copy. I try to keep a discharge summary copy and give one copy to my patients. And general accounts, you need to maintain invoice and voucher folders, whatever payments you make, try to make all the payments through checks. And weekly accounting helps. Yeah, so this is something which I would like to share a few thoughts about. When you're buying equipment, there are 2 ways to go about it. A, if you have some amount of financial backing, you can go all in one and, just buy off the equipment. And of the 3 years of experience that I have realized that had I had that kind of money, I would have done that. Because EMIs bleed you without you even realizing. I used to think that the practice will pick up, EMI is fine, har mahine itna paisa bacha ke de denge, but that comes back to haunt you. So if you have money in bulk and you can invest at least majority of it, go for a clean out, buying of the equipment rather than putting it in staggered payments or EMIs, because that kind of troubles you later on. And bundling, of course, if you have a high volume practice, or if you have connections where people can use the lenses, it is a good thing, but I always found bundling a little dicey, and it's frankly a double-edged sword if you ask me. Not very big fan of bundling. So yeah, you need to have some staff. Her receptionist ran away. I have one receptionist and one. You need to have an OT assistant. You see, everything you can do, even you can cut receipts and all. But all of us doctors are very bad at autoclaving or sterilization and preparing the OT. So वो ढूंढना पड़ता है. That's a very big task, I'm sure, in a big city as well as in a small city. But a good idea is that whoever you keep training them. Keep having soft skill sessions with them. There will be a lot of time in the beginning of your practice where there will be no patients. They'll also feel that they're gaining something out of you. You tell them to show you their techniques. You can tell them what they can add or improve on, etc., and so on. You can decide to have a uniform for them or an apron. See, these things matter in a big city. But in a place like Allahabad, people really don't pay attention. In fact, if you do too much of a branding, I had to tone down my clinic. It had to look shabby because what happens is that public, when they walk into something very swanky with people wearing uniforms and talking in English, they get intimidated. They will not come back to you. They assume that you're going to rip them off. Like, you know, what happens, we would rather have a cup of tea on the road than walk into a Taj and have a cup of tea. So you have to have a balance. All these things I didn't realize, but it's true, it happens. You have to keep that in mind. Like she said, additional jobs always help. I didn't get one because there were no major institutes in Allahabad. Finally, this one opened up, and I'm running this place as the chief consultant, phaco and refractive. And yeah, this makes life very easy. An additional job will give you some security because in private practice, at least in the beginning few years, there is no security. Some months you'll end up making a lot of money, some months, you know, it'll be really bad. Also, if you stay in a city which has a medical college and the rules in your state permit private practice, then medical college is the best option because it gives you a wonderful platform and it gives you a lot of exposure. Unfortunately, in UP, if you're part of the medical college, you can't have private practice, or you can't do private practice. Not that that stops people from doing, but I'm someone who would never do that, so I'd never join the medical college. Also, the other part which is very important for a small town is to have a peripheral practice where people travel about 30 or 40 kilometers out of town once a week or twice a week. I go to a small place called Phulpur, which is where Jawaharlal Nehru was elected for parliament throughout his life. And almost 60% of the cataract surgeries that I've done in the last 2-3 years have come out from this small clinic. Because those patients don't have access. It takes time. When I go there once a week, I see max 10 to 12 patients. But they are the people who are going to make your numbers up. And I am not going to stop that. And I would, advise everyone who is there in a center like in a tier 2 town to find out peripheral centers. You can get in touch with optometrists. We call them jhola chaps in our part of the country. But they are the people who are the first contact with the patients. Get in touch with the local practitioners. They will bring patients. So like sir was saying, we've never done cut practice. So there are two ways that cut practice is done in Allahabad. These people bring patients to you and they say that we'll pay you X amount of money. How much the patient is paying me, you don't ask, you just do and go. And I was approached. I said, boss, I am the doctor here. I'm not going to let you govern what you pay. So as a result, when a practitioner comes to me now, he gets a receipt of 20% of whatever the surgery is, and it goes in my accounts as a consultation charge for my peripheral consultant. So I said, your patient will pay in my clinic and I will pay you this much. If you're not happy, go to someone else. And they generally end up going to someone else. So you have to market yourself, like Karishma said. We have a IC immediately after this, which is all about marketing, so I'm not going into details. Anyways, I think I've overshot my time. Networking, like Karishma mentioned. Free camps, always a good idea. We've been doing a lot of surgery, especially in the winter season. Gives you a very big, boost. So online presence is something which was again a 50-50 thing in a small town. And I don't think in my 3 years I've ever seen a patient who's booked an online appointment and come. But you need to have it because people will type and see. They will not book an appointment, but they will type and see which hospital. So at least your name should come up. So whatever basic structure of a website or whatever money you can spare, just get a website made, have it on the server. At least if it's, someone types the name, it should show up. Just Dial and all are there, they're offering services. I'm always wary of these people, but if it's of your taste, you can go ahead. So finally, bottom line, what am I happy about? I'm happy because I'm my own boss. I'm back home with my friends and family. I'm doing things my way. And of course, the sense of achievement you get when you start on your own is incomparable to anything else. I'm okay about the fact that I have too much responsibility and every buck stops with you. एक bulb का fuse होने से लेकर one pipe leaking or gloves finishing or fogging हुआ नहीं, every damn thing stops with you. So it's a little irritating at some time. And a long incubation period is an understatement because 5 years you just forget about breaking even also. And it tests your patience. It really does. Also, I'm sad because at NN I used to get a lot of perks and academics has gone for a toss. I am someone who is very fond of academics, but unfortunately in a private setup you can't too much because you don't have patience, no data, no academics. And I miss the big city. I don't have pubs in Allahabad. I can't go and have a draft beer in Saturday evenings. So yeah, these are the things I miss. The end of it, I'm happy where I am. And thank you very much.